Things move to the back. Nothing stays in the forefront of our brains forever. Words from our guest, Ted Etoll, when I asked about how he handles hardship on today's episode. Think about that for a minute. We live in a world where every single minute is amplified and seems like hours. You know, the most recent example of this that comes from our experience with the pandemic, right? But no matter how hard, how hard it is, no matter how much grief we experience, no matter the rises, no matter the falls, things will always keep moving because nothing is forever. Today, we talk about this with Ted Etoll, whose journey led them to be one of the most successful music promoters in upstate New York, in a business he never thought he would be in. What do you say? Let's get over it. All right, so our guest today, Ted Etoll, was called by one of our staffers here, this is great, at Overit, as a true legend in the music scene, and then some. ... We're going to find out the then some a little bit in just a few seconds here. Ted has been the go-to for all different genres, with hardcore, metal, punk bands for decades. He's grown more and more over the years in reputation and impact. He's booked thousands of national bands. We'll talk about my experience there with one of his establishment. Served countless music fans in every music niche and has become an icon in the music scene upstate New York. He's the owner of Upstate Concert Hall and the concert production company Step Up Presents. Ted, welcome to the Get Over It podcast.
Oh, thank you, Chris.
Happy to be here. Thank you. So listen, we were talking a little bit before we got on. I was in Albany, New York, upstate New York, 98 to 2000. And then I came back 2002 for another 5 years. So when I was around, there was Northern Lights, right? And Northern Lights was the place to go where they had names that you would know of. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And Northern Lights, now that I'm doing my research, is no longer, and now is where, you know, what the new brand, the name is. So Ted, why don't you go back? Let's go back a little bit in time.
Okay.
I want to start where I want to understand your interest as a human. You know, you went into a specific thing, like music. That was your thing. Where did that come from? Let's talk about that, and then we can talk about how you got into what your gig is, what you do.
Okay. I grew up in a very musical family. My father was a jazz aficionado, and my mother was a dancer, and we always had arts in our home. And I had a cousin, Mary June Shepard, and Mary June worked for the premier AM DJ Boom Boom Brannigan back in the 60s. Legendary DJ in Troy. She was in Catholic High. She did an internship. She was working there while she was going to Catholic High. And we were starting, my brother and I. My brother played guitar. I played piano. And I wasn't a very good piano player. All I cared about is football, baseball, and basketball. But my parents made me play piano. They didn't make my brother play guitar.
They were into music. You liked music, but you weren't like driven to play an instrument.
I wasn't driven to play the music. Exactly. And it wasn't my passion.
Right.
But through the music and through playing music, I became very interested in music because music was always in my house. And my brother and our whole family was in Atlantic City, and I remember it like it was yesterday. And we were walking down the street. We were on vacation. We're walking down the street, and I hear dun 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 dun. And I said to my brother, "Do you hear that? Do you hear that? I can't get no bam bam bam." And that was like that initial energy, that vibe. I said, "Oh man, that is unbelievable." That fall, my cousin Mary June gets tickets for a Jimi Hendrix concert at what was called the Troy Armory, which is up at 15th Street on RPI's campus.
Okay.
Sports facility now for RPI. And Mary June took my brother and I, we were probably 14 years old, took us to see Jimi Hendrix with an opener by the name of The Soft Machine.
Okay.
Soft Machine was a legendary prog band. And Mary June took us to this show. And Chris, when we walked in the door, for me, it was no turning back.
Dude, I can't even imagine. Like I'm thinking about that with Jimmy. Like, what was that like?
It was, and you know, don't forget the facility was massive,
right?
To us as kids, you know. And then it was just so electrifying.
Yeah.
The people, the colors, the
Yeah.
clothes, the energy. And, we were a little too young to buy records then, but we were in the culture. We were in the scene. And then there was a local show in the Henrik Hudson Hotel.
Okay.
And Mary June took, not my brother, but took me to that show. And we walked up into the ballroom, up into the third or maybe it was
what
the
year?
fourth floor.
What year are we now?
Oh, this is like 1965.
Okay. All right.
Like that.
Okay.
And I'm walking up the steps and I see the strobe coming out of the upstairs ballroom, blowing, coming down the stairs. And you can hear it was a local band. And we walked in the door, and there was that smell, that incense, that patchouli, that hippie kind of energy and that vibe, and the lights and the whole thing. And I was like, "Oh man, this is cool, right? This is cool. This is cool." But it gets better. Then Mary June got tickets and took us to see the Doors.
Let me tell you something. Mary June's got the hookup or something. Man.
Mary June had the hookup at WTRY.
Mary June's got the hookup.
Mary June is, to this day, I mention every one of these events.
For real.
And Mary June takes us to see the Doors at the RPI Fieldhouse. The show was actually put on by a fraternity up there. And it was mesmerizing, to see the Doors, and they were on the way up, and it was just unbelievable. Then that summer...
Go ahead. No, you go.
Then that summer... Mary June gets tickets for the Doors at SPAC. And my mother dresses my brother and I in tweed sport jackets. It was like at the end of the season, cool out. And we're, Mom, I don't want to wear a sport jacket. That's not cool, right? Well, we go see the Doors. It was right after the New Haven show where there was a lot of turbulence. When Jim and the band came on stage, the state police completely surrounded the whole front of the stage. And it was like the energy and the vibe and the passion of the crowd. It was incendiary. It was amazing. And about 2 years ago, I was doing a little overnight trip at the Adelphi in Saratoga. And I walk into the library, and they had a big, giant 50-year SPAC coffee table book. And I start thumbing through the coffee table book, and lo and behold, there's the Doors concert in the book with the ticket, $6.50. Huh. And there's a shot in the audience, and Chris, this is no lie.
Come on. No.
We weren't in it, but I have to tell you, every single person, every guy in the audience had a sport jacket on. It was like looking at an old picture of the Brooklyn Dodgers at Ebbets Field in 1950.
What's with the sports code?
It was a thing. I guess it was a thing,
That's great.
And it was a picture of Jim on stage with the police. It was a picture of them in the dressing room. Anyways, to make a long story short, that was the door. That was the crack in the door that got me super interested in popular music.
So it was like, but it was more than that. It was like that energy, I feel like, right? It was like the whole thing. Right. So it's the music, which is the sort of lights the fire, but it's that whole experience. That's
mesmerizing. Yeah.
So, all right. So now so you have that, what that does to you. How do you channel it into something? Right.
Well,
I think that's where a lot of people, that's the hard part, right? You can identify it, but then how do you channel it right?
Yeah. Well, my brother, as I said, was an amazing guitar player, literally a prodigy. And my brother had a band called the Marlins. And I was more into the sports, and my brother was into the music. My brother had the band, and they would play all the circuit, the CYO centers, St. Augustine's Hall, Lansingburg High Gym, that scene. And they were really young. And they played all the popular songs from the area, Inagata Davida, Young Rascals, all that kind of stuff. And they wanted to add a keyboard player, so I came into the band as the keyboard player. And so that was the next step, being in live music, playing it in front of kids, that we grew up with and went to school with. and the adulation that came with that, and we were starting to like girls and meet girls, and it was I could see that it was a good way to meet girls,
right. Yeah.
And but I always had the sports passion, so I told my brother in the band, football or something. He wanted to put all the priorities into the band. I wanted to put all my priorities into football, So I left the band, but it was also the era when all of a sudden we started buying music.
Okay.
We were buying 45s, and we buy 45s. And don't forget, back then, nobody had a lot of money.
How much was a 45? How much, like a single 45?
45 might have been $1.50.
All right.
$2, $1.50. And we'd go down to the music store, which was the predecessor to Music Shack. And the Roy's father, if I know the history properly, he owned the store, ended up changing. I can't remember the name of it, but he changed the name to the Music Shacks, which were our legendary record stores here.
Yep.
So we would take the bus from Lansingburg to downtown Troy. My mother had a beauty salon in downtown Troy. My father owned buildings in downtown Troy, but we at the time now lived in Lansingburg. But, you get on the 5th Avenue bus at 123rd Street, 10 minutes later, you were downtown, you were by yourself, you'd wander around, and the record store became like a church, just thumbing through the records.
Yep. That experience. There's like, dude, Ted, I used to spin records, not to take you over your story. I was a vinyl DJ for a while, and there's nothing like the feel of the vinyl when you're going through it. You know what I'm saying? We don't have that anymore. That experience is like, it's gone. It's just click, click, click. It's very like, it's a real feel. Go ahead. Sorry. So you were
I started buying music, and we could buy one album maybe a month, and my first record that I ever bought was High Tide and Green Grass by the Rolling Stones. And I think the second record I ever bought was the first Doors record, The Doors. Okay. And I think maybe the third record might have been, maybe something by The Animals, Eric Burdon and The Animals, and then maybe something by Jethro Tull, and then the next Doors record. So we started to accumulate, but we were still buying 45s. And if like Creedence Clearwater Revival came out with something like Green River, and on the flip side was another great song. I can't remember what it was, but it might have been like, I Put a Spell on You, right? And I would play that record over and over and over and over and over until my father would run upstairs and take it off the turntable and say, if I hear that record one more time, you know what I mean? Yeah. So, it was a build-up. Yep. I had the right build-up. I had the right framework. I had the right passion.
Yeah, but you had football too, no? What happened there?
I played sports every single day of my whole life up until the time I graduated from high school. And but it didn't interfere with my love for music.
Right.
I just stopped performing music. I played piano. I had a concert piano teacher. His name was Herman Rosenthal. Lived on Washington Park in downtown Troy, where we had lived before moving to the Burg. And when I was 13, I was 9 or 10. And I was just starting to play Pop Warner football. And I went for a lesson. And Herman never showed up. I walked out of my mother's beauty salon. I said, Mom, Herman never showed up. And lo and behold, Herman dropped dead of a heart attack. And when Herman left our life, my life as a piano teacher, my piano career went out the door. and so I was able to concentrate more on sports, but I always had the passion of buying and listening to music. And that passion never ended.
So, all right. So then what's your first gig in this game? Like, so how do you get into the business side of this, and what's that like?
Okay.
Right, because I was always music, right? So,
and I was always a concert. I was always a huge concert goer.
Okay.
There wasn't a big, there was a club scene, but it wasn't, we were into the Doors, Santana, the popular, gigantic classic rock that was growing then. and we would go to Tanglewood. We would go to SPAC. We would go on college. We'd see college shows. I was a huge fan of Edgar and Johnny Winter, and Johnny Winter specifically. But Edgar came out with a record called Edgar Winter's White Trash. Real dirty rock, horn sections, phenomenal. And Edgar did a college tour, and it was Union College in their little church setting that they have on the campus. They played at New Paltz in the gym. They played at Oneonta in the gym. And we went on that like when kids go on little tours following the bands that they love, like we were like kids 10 years ago, 15 years ago, we're following around the Fall Out Boy, we were following around Edgar Winter, and we'd go to Madison Square Garden and see, Johnny Winter, Jethro Tull. We go to the Palace to see all the big shows. So, we were fans. And as a fan, music became a giant part of our life. In 1990, I was working for Metroland, the alternative news weekly.
Yeah.
And I'm a runner, and I run with the general manager of the Albany Marriott. We became like running partners, weekends and stuff like that. And one day we're running, and I also handled the account for Metroland. And one day, Brett, his name was, the manager, he said, he says, we have a dark Sunday here at the Marriott. They had a live music venue, very corny. It was called Mermaids. It had like a mermaid theme, but they had an amazing room. Great sight lines, great stage, great sound, the sound sounded good in there, and they would do cover bands Thursday, Friday, and Saturday.
Where was this, Ted? Where was this?
Albany Marriott is on Wolf Road.
Okay. All right. So it was at the Marriott. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. And he had Sundays Dead. And Metroland had been talking about getting back into the live music business and supporting it with editorial, with reviews, sponsoring concerts, sponsoring shows, that whole thing. And I had all the concert venues, and I had all the concert promoters. So I was starting to make inroads with, the concert people that were putting on shows at Saratoga Winters, the people that were putting shows on at SPAC. I handled those accounts. One of the big concert promoters at the time was Keith Beckia, and the name of his company was what's it called? I'm having a senior moment. I'll think of it. Anyways, so I was doing the advertising for them. So we were deeply involved.
Right.
And Metroland was behind sponsoring shows. They'd get free tickets, and we'd go to Saratoga Winters and see shows. So I'm in
now
the
you're
business.
in it, right?
Now I'm really in it. I'm taking an interest in it, but I'm never taking an interest in it like I want to be a concert promoter.
Right.
I'm just taking an interest in it because that's the business that I'm in.
Right. Exactly.
I'm in the entertainment business. Working for Metroland, and Metroland was a very social company, Chris. Very social. Party for this, party for that, party for this, party, best of parties, this type of party, it's phenomenal. Amazing job, amazing company. So Brett says, I want to do a battle of the bands, and I want Metroland to sponsor it on the Sunday nights. So I go back
This
to
is
management.
at that place, that mermaid place that we're talking about?
At the mermaid place.
All right.
So I put together this event where a Metroland live music concert series, and we did a battle of the bands, and we solicited to the general public that the bands send in their cassettes when that was a thing, and we got bazillion cassettes, and we would listen to all of them. And I came up with the idea of doing 5 different nights. We'll do a hard rock night, we'll do a rock and blues night, we'll do an alternative night, we'll do an R&B and hip hop night, and we'll do a jazz and a folk night. Kind of stuff that, mirror each other. And then we'll have a grand finale, and we got all kinds of sponsors, and we got all kinds of gifts. We got recording studio time, we got guitars, we got a lot of stuff. But the amazing thing, not only did I meet all the bands, the prominent bands in the market. But what I did is I went out and I partnered up with all the radio stations that were playing the music that we were going to have at the Marriott.
At the Marriott.
Correct.
Smart.
And the key partnership that I made, 2 key partnerships, one was EQX and the other was, believe it or not, Siena, their college radio station. The Saint. And the Saint at the time had local kids literally running the station and running it like it was a professional station. And the programming, Chris, was hard rock, hardcore, metal, hip hop, R&B, and it would rotate. And like I said, the kids who had all the passion, the local kids who had the passion, they were the ones who ran the station. They ran it. And they ran it like a business. So when I partnered up with them, in reality, I can't take credit for this. They introduced me to the local scene. And every show that we ended up doing was a blowout.
And you all did them there. You did them still at the same place?
Did them all at the Marriott.
But Ted, how are you getting paid on these? So like explain to me.
Nobody's getting paid. Nobody's getting paid. All the money, if there was there a fee?
If there was or wasn't,
there was no fee.
You weren't getting any money. I never made a nickel for the first 3 years I was in the business. Okay. You were just forming all the connections. You were building. Yep. Okay.
I brought in a production team. I brought in a lighting guy. I had a mentor, Joe Mealy, legendary blues guitar player here. Joe was my great friend that I grew up with. Joe to this day plays in some of the most amazing bands in this area. Legendary old classic rock cover band called Emerald City, blues bands. Joe's a legend here. And Joe took me under his wing, showed me the production. He did the production and he was super mellow and he raised me up at this, and he brought in a light person. And so I learned the business from the ground floor up. But my expertise was always marketing. I knew how to market stuff because I'd done it all my life. Did it at the Times Union before for 10 years. Then I went on to Metroland.
Before there was the digital advertising that we have now. This is relationship building.
That was an inkling in somebody's eye. Trust me.
Yeah.
It might have been in some movies, but it wasn't in reality.
Right.
So we were doing it the old-fashioned way, by the seat of your pants. That's how I learned the business. And so every show was monstrous. The finale was monstrous. Every show sold out. I met all the great artists, became very close to them. So when the event ended, all the kids in the bands and all the people that I partnered up with on the marketing side all said to me, Teddy, you and Metroland can't leave this business. These are the best shows we've had here. These shows are amazing. You got to stay in the business. And I never in a million years, Chris, did I ever think I was going to stay in the business. I just figured, okay, I'll get my Sunday nights back and I got my day job, what I mean? And I'll go live a normal life, So I said, well, what the heck? I said, I got free time. I'll continue to do it. And Brett at the Marriott, he didn't want it to end. So we started 2 shows on Sunday nights there. And we'd have 3 great bands for $5. That's when we started charging. And I would give all the money to the bands. I would pay Joe Mealy. We'd split up all the money equally. And we'd have an alternative night. And then we'd have, an R&B night. And then we'd have another night. And I'd started to do things that people told me, dude, you can't do that. You can't mix up the genres. And I said, why not? And I'd have like Ernie Williams with the heavy female fronted hard rock band Crisis, which I believe Dan produced the record, or he may have put the record out.
Oh, really?
Yes.
So actually, you know what, man? That's really cool. That's very forward thinking of you, because I think the tradition would be don't pick something and just go in on that thing and let people come to you. But the other side is, why not? Why limit it?
Why not? Where's the law? you know? But what would happen, what my goal was, Chris, was I wanted to have the fan base, kids who were coming to these shows, to not only see Crisis, but let them see Ernie Williams, this legendary 85-year-old blues man, you know, and let them see for themselves.
Give people another perspective.
Exactly. Because they would never go otherwise.
Yeah, man.
You know, and when I asked the bands were hip enough to understand that this was a good way to get new faces in front of the artists, you know?
Yep.
So that's how we started. I started mixing and matching. But we had some beautiful shows there. And we did that 7, 8, 9 months. But what was happening was, because I was doing the advertising for all of the clubs, Saratoga Winners, QE2, Bogies, you know, they all kept on saying, how come you can't do those shows at my club? How come you're doing them at the Marriott? Right? And I was saying, well, you know, this is just a hobby for me, you know. Anyways, so
nobody cares until they care, Ted. You know what I'm saying?
That's right. So I always loved heavy music. Black Sabbath, Led Zeppelin, you know, came up in that era, you know, edgy music, Doors, you know. So I put together a show with the Troy Core kids, the Troy Hardcore kids, and I called it the St. Valentine's Day Metal Massacre. And it was a Sunday night. It happened to be Valentine's Day. And it was the 3 biggest bands from Troy, heavy, I mean, brutal, Harbinger, Attica, I mean, brutal, heavy. And the room held maybe 300 people. And I think we stopped letting people in at like 450.
Oh,
right?
Man.
And it was insanity. At one point, all you could see was feet. That's all you could see. And the staff was petrified.
They were probably freaking out.
And I remember Mike Stack like it was yesterday. And Mike said, Teddy, his band was headlining Harbinger. And he said, Teddy, the first note we play, I want to forewarn you, this place is going to explode. And I said, Mike, we're going to go out of here with our heads held high, you know? And it was insanity. And it was the most fun show I'd ever been a part of in my life, you know? And the room got destroyed. The kids wrecked the room, tore bathroom dividers out, tore sinks out of the ladies' room. Staff said they got their pocketbooks stolen. You know what I mean? I mean, it was chaos, but it was worth every second. I'm not lying to you. So that was the motivation. That was the stimuli for me to say, I love this business.
Right.
I love this business. I love the energy, the kids, the vibe, the interactions, the conversations, the music, the time and the energy that these local bands were putting into their music. And at the time, the local bands, Stigmata, Harbinger, Attica, these great, I mean, they were at national level back in 1990, 89, 91. I mean, monster bands. And they had fan bases. And they also had WVCR promoting it.
Right.
Which was huge. 25, I think they had a 25,000 watt radio station, you know?
So then that's it. That was then you went and you started it. You went from just a Sunday night to a thing.
Let me finish the scenario at the Marriott. So the next day I go to work. It's a Monday. I get a call first thing in the morning not from Brett, but from the food and beverage manager. And he says to me, Teddy, you got to come up here right now. So I go up. He takes me on a tour of the place. He was looking pretty, it was a gloom environment. Let's put it this way. He takes me around the place and he shows me all the damage. And he turns around to me and he says, I'm sorry, we can't do these shows here anymore. And the first thought that comes into my mind was, this is a blessing. Now I can start taking all these shows, because I felt obligated to do them at the Marriott. And they gave me the chance. And
you didn't really want to break up.
No.
Yeah, right.
So now I had the opportunity to start taking them into the clubs. And once we started taking the shows into the clubs, it turned it into a cool thing, you know, because the QE2 back then was super cool. the dark.
So just the job. So explain to me. So you when you say taking them to the clubs, that means you are coming to the club with the artists, the night, the whole production. What are you coming to them with? You're coming like tell me
they
that
do
process.
Nothing. I bring my own security guy. I bring my own door
so
guy.
You're one-stop shop.
I'm a one-stop shop. I do all the catering myself.
All right.
I hire a kid to help me. You know, Mike Asardi, who's in Dan's band, The Clay People, was with me from the right from the start. You know, so we started doing hardcore shows, and I'd ask the band, and I'd sit down with the kids. I'd go to lunch with some of the kids in the bands. I'd go to lunch with some of the kids in the scene. And they'd say, Teddy, we want to see Integrity. We want to see Sub-Zero. We want to see, all the legendary hardcore bands. You know, we want to see the Casualties. So what I would do, they would give me the list. They would give me the bands. And then I'd go out and do the research. And I'd try to get the bands to come and play. And it just built.
So it's like old school market research, man.
Old school market research.
Get out there asking questions.
Old school market research. And it started to build and build and build and build. And the local bands got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. We did a show at Saratoga Winters with 4 local bands. And I love changing up the styles a little bit, you know. And we had a punk band. We had a female-fronted, kind of gothy band. We'd have Stigmata, which was hardcore, and we had Clay People, which was progressive, and industrial progressive. Show did like 1,000 people, Saratoga Winters, completely sold out. And it was event after event after event.
Right. It was consistent.
Where this thing started, consistent. And I never stopped. Every week we would have shows. And we built.
So wait a minute,
still
doing this? Are you still doing this in like spare time, or is this just
spare
your job?
time? Jeez. Spare time. The blessing was that Metroland was right next door to the QE2, and my house was on Spring Street, literally across the street. So we were at QE2.
You didn't have to go very far.
Right, didn't have to go far. It was no logistical from here to there. Saratoga Winters was another thing, bogies and other. So we started to outgrow bogies. I mean, outgrow the QE2. And of course, because when we do shows at the QE2, the other clubs got mad because I was doing shows at the QE2. But the kids wanted to be at the QE2, and they wanted to do shows there. But it only held 250 people. If you have 400 people in a room like that, it's chaos, and it's dangerous. So we started moving around. But the reason that the scene built so big was that the bands, Chris, were so good. I could have been the Steve Jobs of marketing, but in reality,
they were the reason why. You're saying
the bands were the reason that people came out.
Right, but you were able to put it together to give them the forum and the outlet to do that stuff.
We were able to put it together where the shows were organized, they were professional, everybody got paid. It was a group effort. I'd go to the band. What do you want for a guarantee? I'd walk in the door. I take my whole paycheck from Metroland. I walk in the door with every single nickel, and if I lost every single nickel, I ate ramen for that week. You know what I mean? But it was just an amazing, amazing build up to the next step.
So, within the time we have, tell me where Northern Lights came from, because I want to make sure my own selfish reasons.
Okay.
I grew up around knowing Northern Lights.
Okay.
So how did that?
So when I'm at Saratoga Winters doing shows, now all of a sudden, the owner of Northern Lights, who just took over, he comes to me because I'm doing the advertising for Northern Lights too. Big advertiser, big, and he now wants to start doing some of these shows. So. But now I got Saratoga Winters, which is not as big, but almost as big, But Northern Lights was a little classier, and I wanted to step it up. And so I started doing shows at Northern Lights. And
same genre, same like metal, hard, or no?
Well, at the beginning. But about 5 or 6 years into my career, I had angels come into my life. I had mentors come into my life. And I started booking shows with booking agents. Booking agents started hearing about our scene, and booking agents started calling me. And now I'm saying to myself, geez, is this what I really want? Do I really want to be in this business at this level where booking agents are calling me and I'm booking bands, putting offers in? So I said,
so booking agents, just for everyone, booking agents are calling you saying like, can I get my guy or my group in your thing? That's what they're coming to you now.
Exactly. Because no hardcore bands, no punk bands, they didn't have agents. You just dealt with the band,
right?
You know? So now I got people calling me, and then out of nowhere, I get a call from who today is one of my not only lifetime best friends, but one of my two greatest mentors, Artie Quitchoff and Marcel Timot, who are from Buffalo. And they wanted to come into Albany and do shows. They had a company that they were looking to expand, and they were already in Rochester, and they were already in Syracuse, and they wanted to come to Albany. And one of the agents that I was doing business with told them about me, and we did a show together. And from that show, we made another show, and then we did another show. And the next thing I know, out of nowhere, I'm in the real music business, learning the real music business, learning how to settle a show, not on a napkin, you know what I mean? Yep. But, you know, the economics of it, the marketing of it, the settlement of it, the magnitude of it, I learned from two amazing people. Marcel, over the course of the last, 20 years, has booked SPAC. He books a Darien Lake for Live Nation. And Artie went to work for Live Nation, but didn't like it, and he ended up owning his own company. And Artie today has a similar business as mine. He owns the Club to Town Ballroom in Buffalo, but he also does concerts other places, you know, like with another company like Step Up Presents. So I had, out of nowhere, these amazing mentors came into my life. And another great mentor, John Peters from Mass Concerts, one of the most successful, you know, independent concert promoters in the country at the time. And John owns the Palladium. He owns the, you know, he owns 3 clubs. It's just an amazing man, an amazing mentor. And, you know, and I met John as an advertiser at Metroland. So, you know,
all roads go back to Metroland, man.
Metroland was the key, believe it or not.
It was.
Because without Metroland, I have no credibility. That
and Mary June, right? Was that
and Mary June, exactly. so then we started doing shows at Northern Lights, and I started partnering shows at Northern Lights with Artie and Marcel because they were booking bigger shows.
Okay.
And then I started booking shows at Northern Lights with my current partner, Stan Levinstone, who also was booking shows at Northern Lights.
Okay.
So, but Stanley's not from here. He's from New Jersey. He's not here. So these people came into my life all about the same time. And it took my company from DIY to more of a legit accounting, you know, like, you know, it became a real legit company.
But when did you break off? When did you break off from Metroland? When did that happen? When was this is where we say, when did you get over
this is funny. I never, ever, ever left my job at Metroland, ever.
You didn't?
I stayed at Metroland until the day the IRS came in the door and put the chain around the place, Chris. I never left. I stayed there until the bitter end.
That's awesome.
You know? I got a lot of energy. I could do a lot of jobs, you know?
That's great.
And, because there were a million perks at Metroland,
right?
Especially if you're in my business, you know. I got the advertising for a fraction of the cost. You know, kids like seeing their names in the newspaper.
Yeah,
you know. So I never left Metroland ever, and I'd probably still be there today if it was open. Yeah, you know. But when it ended, I just say to myself, "Damn, how did you do all of this?" You know?
Yeah, really.
It's amazing. The human spirit can take it a lot.
Can take you through. I know.
Yeah.
So, but the Northern Lights becomes yours at some point. You buy.
We'll evolve into that. So now I'm doing shows everywhere, and we're at Bogies. We're at Valentine's, where we would do our small shows. The next bigger shows we'd go to Bogies. Then Bogies closes. So now we're at Valentine's for our small shows. We did spectacular shows there. And again, Howard Glassman, who was the manager of Bogies when I started, who was another mentor and another supporter of mine, And, you know, to this day, I love Howard. He was so supportive of what I did because, you know, hardcore and punk and metal, you know, it's not easy on the venue. It's not easy on the staff, you know. So you have to have an understanding manager. But we were bringing in the business, you know. And people overlook some things when they're doing business, you know. And we were at Valentine's. We were doing great shows there. We outgrew the QE2, but the QE2 was also having some severe financial difficulties. So we moved where the doors were open to us, you know. So now I'm at Saratoga Winters doing the bigger shows, you know, the Guars, the bigger shows, the Downs, you know, the bigger heavy bands. So now we're also doing some of the cleaner stuff at Northern Lights. So now I'm clashing between, I get Saratoga Winters every time I do a show there. The guy at Northern Lights complains, how come you know? Every time I do a show at Northern Lights, Salam and his brother complain, you know. So I'm trying to play it about, well, you know, I always, you know, I'm trying to make everybody happy. I'm on vacation in California, and I have 20 shows on the schedule at Saratoga Winters. Salam calls me, and he says, Teddy, he says, I'm closing the doors. I had a big fight with my brother. He said, and we're closing. I'm going to try to sell the club. So I took all the shows that I had at Winters and moved them up to Northern Lights, miraculously. I was able to do all of it while I was on vacation in California, visiting my brother. So I moved everything up there. Saratoga Winters closed, and now Northern Lights was our big venue. But we still had Valentine's as our small venue. So, but now we're starting to do college shows. We're at Siena I'm doing with you know, Artie and Marcel. We're doing Palace Theater shows. Now I'm really learning the business. So we start doing shows at Northern Lights. So we're at Northern Lights maybe, I don't know, 3, 4, 15.
When was this?
We took over the room 15 years ago. So it was 2005.
Okay. Yep. All right.
2006, like that. So I get a call one day from the landlord. And I could see some holes in his operation, the guy that owned the club. You know, he owed me money. He couldn't pay the settlements. He'd write me checks that would bounce, you know, all the telltale signs. So I get a call from the landlord, the manager of the mall up in Clifton Park. And he says to me, Teddy, he says, I'm going to close Northern Lights down. He said, I'm going to shut him down. He hasn't paid the rent for, I don't know, a year, right? So he says, do you want the club? And I'm like, I want a club like I want a hole in the head. You know what I mean? But if we didn't have the club, we don't have a business.
You got nothing,
Got nothing. So Stanley and I, my partner, we buy the club and we redo it, you know, which was a blast. And I looked at it like, well, we can put, you know, $400,000 into a club and turn it into something nice instead of the dump it was, you know, put dressing rooms and showers and make it, you know, clean it up and, you know, and so we put the money into it and it was worth every minute of it. It was spectacular, you know, and we were able to build the business on that move. You know, that we owned a club. Now we were club owners.
And you started to diversify genres again, or what?
We always diversified, but we were really able to diversify when we were in Northern Lights because we had the room. We had a nice, clean room. We had tons of space. We had great parking. You know, we had everything. So let me give you the story about the name.
Yep.
So, unbeknownst to us, and we didn't have a liquor license when we took over the club. So, and if we had shuttered the doors of the club, we were going to lose Dropkick Murphys, Shinedown. We had monster after monster after monster after monster. So we didn't want to shutter the club and take the hit of not having that income coming in. So we made the previous owner an offer to stay on, use his liquor license, right? And he would be behind the scenes. He would have no say in anything. He could have his office space, you know, and we would continue on until we
Right, you
made
got
the move to get our own liquor license, right? So it was a nightmare of a scenario, having a previous owner. So unbeknownst to us, not only didn't he pay the rent, but he didn't pay any bills. So when we took over the club, we'd get a $13,000 bill from the sound company that he was leasing that he didn't pay. We'd get a $4,000, $5,000 bill from the electrician that he didn't pay. There was a fire up there. I don't know if you remember. There was a fire up there, and electrician had to come in and redo all of this, that, but it was endless. And I said to my managers at the Stanley, we can't continue like this. We got to get him out of here. So we threw him out, physically threw him out. Went down to the liquor authority. We were still paying him, but we threw him out. And while we were paying him, we went down. We got our own liquor license. And when we got our own liquor license, we changed the name.
Okay.
We had to run from the name because the name had such a bad reputation to it. And although I loved the name had a bad reputation to it, and it also didn't pay any bills. So
that was the Upstate Concert Hall. That was the switch.
That was the switch. So that's where that name came from. And
so now, though, you're now moving, correct?
Our lease was up. Our lease was up in December. We're moving to a new club in downtown Albany in what was the Capitol Rep building on Pearl Street. Our lease was up in December. We were supposed to have had the club built and in by August, and then the landlord in Pearl Street was going to cover our expenses at Upstate Concert Hall so we could operate from last August straight through to the time the lease ended. So we would have paid the lease in Northern Lights. That would have been empty. We would have been in Albany, would have been up and running. The builder is a developer, and they have 800 new apartments in downtown Albany that are going to be 10 minutes to our door. So he wanted to make us, he approached us on making us the centerpiece of an arts district that they're recreating down there. And we were going to be the centerpiece, and he's marketing the apartments to young people, everyone, a potential customer of ours, to, this is going to be what you have if you live here. So that was the attraction. They're making tremendous progress on the building. We have a new name that I have not disclosed to anybody yet, but I think this is the prime time to do it.
Oh man, let's do this.
Let's do it. Okay. Because everybody's asking us, when does this appear? When does this go live?
Not for another month or so.
Oh, that's perfect. That's perfect synergy. All so right. we're gonna call the club Empire Live. That's the upstairs, the 1,000 cap room, Empire Live, and we have a 400 cap room underneath that you have to go around into the alley to get into. It's really super cool, right? Big long room like Bogey's was.
Yeah, that's
and we're
cool.
gonna call that the Empire Underground.
The Empire Underground. Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Ted just dropping the new names on the Get Over It podcast. Hell yeah. So what are you thinking? What is the timeline?
Well, the timeline is the builder tells us we could be in the place by the end of March, but
whatever is happening in the world today.
I don't think we'll be in there until fall.
So that's the last thing I want to ask you about before we have to go. And that is in this business, I'm sure you've seen a lot of things, right? A lot of different things, but what has happened in this past year is unique to a business like yours, right? I mean, what hits it harder? Obviously it's would you ever think something like this? And how is it going to change something about how you operate going forward? Do you think it's just a terrible blip?
We've always
seen, to go through this.
We've always seen changes in our business. Every business goes through changes, when somebody comes to the door and they show an ID, they're definitely going to have to show some type of a form that they had the vaccine. So that's certainly going to be a change. Will people have to come with masks on? I certainly hope not, because I think that'll be unattractive. You know what I mean? Because, we're an attractive business. People like to look at each other's faces. Guys come out to meet girls at this,
Right.
But I mean, the devastating part of this thing is the fact that live music is part of people's lexicon. It's part of their lives.
Right.
It's ingrained in
I've
them.
heard that from so many people, man. Like some things like that. I can't wait till I can go and just listen to live music.
Yeah.
Like I've heard
That's
that.
all I hear. That's all I hear everywhere I go. And I think because of that pent up rage that people have about not being able to go out and see live music, that when we're open, that it is just going to be like a bunch of, it's going to be like Vikings coming in from Norway. You know what I mean? They're going to come in with hatchets in their hands.
That's
you know,
great. I mean, it's one of these things that I've been talking about. Like during this sort of time, it really makes you have these new, like much higher appreciations for the things that you liked, but maybe not realize you really liked. And then it gets taken from you, and you're like, "Whoa," you know what I'm saying? So, like, I hope the bounce back is strong.
Chris, you know, we're smart people. You know, my managers are a lot smarter than I am. I can say that with a clear conscience. Jen and Dave, and what I just admire about Jen and Dave, what they've done over the pandemic is Dave is in a master's degree program in business at UAlbany, and Jen went back to school, has taken 18 credit hours, and they're learning. They're back in school learning stuff that can apply to our business.
Yeah.
So the future is looking spectacular. We have a magnificent landlord who's building us a beautiful club with 2 rooms in it. We're in the heart of Albany. You know, if we didn't have this scenario, I would probably come in here with a different tone, you know, but we're very, very, very enthusiastic. I haven't allowed this pandemic to torture me, you know.
Good.
I heard from my people. I heard from the people that do this on a part-time basis.
Right.
I heard for the bands, you know, I heard for, you know, just the interaction that people have and the love of music and the social activities that come from it, you know. You know, I'm wondering, how many of the great bands that we booked are they able to survive?
Right, exactly.
You know, are we ever going to see them again?
Right, was that the last time you saw them?
Last time we saw them, you know, because a year can be like 10 years to some people.
Right.
You know, people get older, they want to do other things. Are they going to have the money to be able to start it up again? You know, I know everybody's been hurting this business. Agencies, you know, labels, you name it, at the hierarchy. You know, we're going to go back to a whole different paradigm. All the booking agents that we had that were at, you know, Paradigm or you know, higher, all the different agencies, they moved around like it was a chess game.
Right.
We don't even know where they are.
You have no idea.
Well, we will know. We know, but it's been impossible to follow. You know, John Doe went from here to there. You know, Mary Doe went from there to there. And it's like when this thing starts, there's new agencies. Agencies have been slashed by 50%, 60%. You know, marketing people that I do business with every single day, are they still going to be there? You know, so it's going to be a different energy.
It'll be different, but you're going to do it. Like, I mean, that's it, right? You're going to do it the way it is. Empire Live, Empire Underground. Hell yeah.
Yeah.
So, but last minute or two, this is something I asked people on the show before, like I close it, is, you know, I think people in life and in business, they eventually hit a wall or they struggle. This is our, what we call in the show, like our get over it moment. So if someone's listening to this and they're going to take if you have advice for them or something, when they're feeling stuck or they're feeling like they can't get over, like what do you want to say to someone like that to keep, you know, like that you just got to do it?
Yeah. Well, number one, if you're in a business that you have passion for and that you love, that passion will never leave, ever, ever, ever. And this year, well, let's look at it as what it was. It was a pause, you know? And a year is not that long a time, you know? The first show that we have, nothing stays in the forefront of your brain forever, Chris. It moves to the back. And this will move to the back. And whatever business that you're in, you know, when you are back in business, if you have had this kind of a pause, like I have, like we have, trust me when I tell you, once we strike the first note, this will be over with. And we'll be looking nothing but forward.
He is Ted Etoll, Empire Live, Empire Underground. Stay tuned for more information. By the time the show drops, hopefully we'll hear and we'll know more about it. I am Chris Fasano. This is the Get Over It podcast, where people come together to discuss the various ways to stop just getting through it and start getting over it. Ted, thank you so much, man. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Chris. A great pleasure.